So this tutorial is kind of multi-purpose. You can use it for whatever you want. So it's another card, but this time we've got a lovely bunch of daffodils. Now I've turned mine into a Mother's Day card, but it could be a St. David's Day celebration or a nice Easter card. Or it doesn't even have to be a card. You could do it on a sheet of paper and turn it into a painting and frame it. It's got lots of lovely 3D-ness, is that word? 3D-ness to it. So each of the daffodils are painted and then cut out and then inserted into this. So I've made some templates for you. If you don't want to use them, you don't have to. Some people like things to be as simple as possible. So these are the templates. We've got a template for the paper wrapper and for the little label. And then 3 types of daffodils. So there's step-by-step, there's a step-by-step drawing guide. Or you can take this one, and then I'll show you in the video how to trace that and add in all the details. And then another daffodil pointing a different direction, again step-by-step guide, and a third one. So I'm starting off with my paper wrap and label sheet, and I've got a piece of tracing paper and a pencil, and I'm just going to go round the outline of this. And then I'm going to take a thicker pencil and scribble on the back. And I can move that to one side. And take my greeting card. So I'm using a bit of watercolour paper, which I've folded and creased. And decide where I want to put the paper wrapper. I want to leave plenty of room at the top to fill up with flowers, so I think I'm going to put mine about there, and then I'm going to go back over my lines and then just check that I've got an outline, which I have. So I'll put the tracing paper to one side for the moment. And then I think those lines are dark enough that I can just ink straight onto it. So I'm taking my Winsor & Newton fine liner. It's a 0.3, but it is waterproof because I'm going to paint the paper wrap after I've inked it. Giving it quite uneven edges, jaggedy edges, which sort of crumpled paper would have. And then I'm going to let the ink dry completely and then rub out any pencil lines. So this is now ready for painting. So I'm going to go for my browns, and I always like to, when I'm painting with watercolours, I always like to start with my lightest colour. So I'm just going to do a really thin wash of, I think this one's yellow ochre. I'm just going to wet the whole of the sort of inside of the paper wrap. So the whole of the inside is wet, and then I'm going to pick up a slightly darker colour. I'm going to blob it around this edge because we're imagining that this is hollow. So it's going to be darker in here. Gone slightly onto the edge there. So it's going to be darker here and getting lighter as it goes up. You won't see a lot of this because your flowers are going to fill it. But there are any little gaps poking through, it's nice if they're coloured in. And you can be quite rough with it because it's, again, remember it's crinkled paper. And then I've got a darker brown again. Actually, it's just a more reddy brown. So that's a bit of burnt umber. And I might put a little bit of black in it as well, just to take the warmth out of it. And I'm going to put that in again, just around that edge. And then just soften any harsh lines. Now I want to leave that to dry before I paint this edge, otherwise it's all going to bleed into each other. So I'm going to let that dry. Dry enough now, so I'm going to do the same again on the outside, and imagining where the light is falling on it. I might leave a few areas completely white, but just kind of blobbing the paint on. This bit's folding over the top, so it'll be a bit darker underneath, and I'm imagining that there's the string going around here, so this bit's sort of tucked and gathered in, might be a bit darker. And then just with a clean brush, I can just soften any edges, make sure it's nice and wet. And then go in with my darker colour, which is a raw umber, a sort of middle dark colour. Again, just go for the areas which would be a bit darker. I'm leaving these sort of folded over bits for the moment. I'll come back to those. And then with my darkest colour, just going in on the very darkest areas. And then I'm going to let that dry. So now that's dry, what we want to do is we want to cut a hole along that edge so that we can slide our flowers in. So open your card up, don't make the mistake of cutting it like that. And a cutting mat and a scalpel blade, which is much easier than a pair of scissors, and you just want to carefully cut along that line. So you want a hole cut in it like that so that you can slide your flowers in a minute. And then we'll put this to one side while we get started on our daffodils. So I've done some sheets, as you know, with the daffodils kind of drawn out. So you can either follow along the steps and draw your own, or you can trace over these and draw the daffodils that way. So, or you can take a screenshot and print it out from there. So that's daffodil 1, daffodil 2, and daffodil 3. But I am going to trace over them. So I've got a piece of tracing paper, and let's do this one first of all. So we've got a kind of frilly edge on the top of the daffodil, so I'm just going to put some little frills on there, and then I'm going to put a line around there, and then there's going to be the little stamens sticking up in the middle, and then some lines down there. And then once I've got that shape, I'm going to take it off the drawing, and I'm just going to finish off any last bits. So put some shape in the leaves. And then we've got a daffodil shape that we can use. So I'm going to go and do that for the rest of the daffodils and for the leaves as well. So I've been around with my tracing paper and drawn out each of the daffodils. So really we can get 6 daffodils out of this because we can flip the paper over. So with the first one on my watercolour paper, I'm just going to place it on, and I don't want to waste too much paper, so I'm putting it up in the corner, and I'm just going to go over my lines like this. And then you can check that you've got lines that you can see, and then rather than scribbling on the back, I'm just going to turn it over and do it the other way round. So when it's in our bouquet, it'll look like it's 2 different daffodils, but actually it's the same drawing that you're just reusing. So you can see that I've just got faint lines of where my daffodils are. So I'm going to do that for all of them, and then we can ink them. So I'm going to go over the outline first of all with my waterproof fine liner, and then I'm going to put a few details in. So I hope you can, I'm trying to angle it so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to start off with a kind of central line down each of the petals, because that gives me an idea of the shape. And then I'm going to put in just a few more lines in the areas where it would be darker. They don't have to be like solid lines. This is just giving you a feeling that the petals are curling up, that they've got a bit of movement to them. And I'm going to put some little texture marks on that little papery bit, and then on the sort of trumpet, again some lines coming down in the direction that the trumpet's going, and then a few little lines coming off there to show that that's the sort of lip of the trumpet curling over, and then some, I can't see terribly clearly, let me turn it that way, and then some lines coming up out of the middle, and then this bit curls over here, so a few little lines suggesting that it's curving down that way. And that one's ready for painting, but I'm going to go round and do the same to all the other drawings. With the leaves, it's a very similar thing. I'm going to put in the outline, and then I'm going to use lines to show the movement of it. I'm going to make some of them a bit longer as well, because we can always cut bits off the end if we need to. And just some broken lines like that, because daffodil leaves are quite veiny like that. And then with the curled over ones, just going to do the outline. And then imagine that's coming over this way. And then because it's folding over, imagine there's a middle line that's going to come down kind of like that. Now once that ink is completely dry, I'm going to rub out any pencil lines and we can start painting them. So we're ready for painting. I've got some clean water, my watercolour paints, brush. I've got a round tip brush. This is a number 3. I've got several different types of yellow in my selection. Oh, and I've got a really dirty brush, I better clean that. With yellows, it's quite important that you do make sure that your brush is clean because the colours can get muddied very quickly. Just give that a bit of a clean. So I'm going to go for this lightest of yellow, which is called lemon yellow, but just use whatever you've got, or if you've only got one yellow, just use a very light wash of it. So this is my lightest colour, and I'm thinking about which areas are the lightest on the daffodil, the bits where sunlight's hitting it, and they will be white. So I'm going to start my lightest colour and kind of dab it on, but I'm leaving some white space so it looks as though the sunlight's kind of reflecting off the surface of the daffodil. So any areas where it's dark, any areas which are in shadow, you know you're safe to paint into. And you can see I'm not being particularly precious about it. I'm just sort of blobbing it on and then pulling a few lines out like that, and leaving areas of the, a bit closer so you can see, and leaving areas of white like this. And then I'm going to go in with the next yellow, which I think is, let me have a look at my pot. This is a Windsor yellow. You could use a cadmium yellow or whatever you've got, and it's just still very bright. It's just a bit of a sort of deeper colour than the lemon yellow. And I'm just going to do the same again, but just leave some of the areas where the lighter yellow is. And next I'm going to go in with, this one is a little bit of yellow ochre. As I said, yellows can get muddy very quickly, so I only want a tiny bit of this, and it's just going to go in the much darker areas where you've got little folds on the edge of the trumpet, and where the trumpet kind of meets the petals, a little bit down there. Because if you put too much on, it won't be long before your daffodil doesn't actually look yellow anymore. Go kind of orange. Still probably look quite nice, but. And I'm going to put some of my bright yellow on that middle bit. And again, go in with my yellow ochre just to give that middle stamen a bit of definition. And then we've got this sort of papery bit, so I've got a bit of raw umber here, something that's not, it's brown but it's not too warm. I'm going to leave a few white areas on this as well, but sort of down the side where it's maybe a bit darker, drop some bits on. And then greens, I've got sap green, which I like to mix with a little bit of olive green. I tend to take it down one side of the stem, and then with a clean damp brush just smooth out any hard lines. And then if you want to, you can just dab a bit more on so you get that nice watercolour texture. I think that's quite nice like that. If I wanted to make any areas a bit darker, I might take a bit of the raw umber and just go in just in the very darkest bits of the flower. But really don't overdo these bits. Daffodils are really lovely bright flowers. Add a bit more to there. And that's the daffodil done. Leaves. So I'm going to stick with my olive green and sap green mix. Start off quite a washy colour. I'm just literally pulling some lines down, and if you get lines like that in a leaf like a daffodil leaf, it actually kind of helps to create the sort of ridge texture of a daffodil leaf. And you can leave some areas white again, because again where the light's shining on it, it's just going to make it look more realistic. Not that it has to look real, but looks like you've done it on purpose. You can go in and darken up a few bits if you want to. Same process, just not going over as much of the leaf. And the bent leaves, the same, so probably do this one in sections, but where it's darker I sort of start there and pull it down, and keep your paintbrush lines going with your ink lines in the same direction, so it looks like the veins of the leaf. Make that bit where it folds over a little bit darker. You see I've gone over the edge there, but I'm not going to worry about that, because when we cut it out in the next stage, that won't really matter. There we go. So I'm going to go round and paint all of them in the same way, and then they'll be ready for cutting out. there we go, that's them all painted and ready for cutting out. So I've got some little scissors, an X-Acto knife or scalpel with a nice sharp blade. Hopefully that's a sharp blade, I haven't actually checked it. And I've got a cutting board. If you want to do the whole thing with scissors, by all means go for it. I find it a bit easier with a sharp scalpel blade. And I'm going to cut it out, but I'm not going to cut right up to the black line. I'm going to leave a little bit of the white watercolour paper showing. And on ones like this, I'm actually going to cut it right down to the end. I'm not going to cut across like that, because that extra length might be useful when it comes to inserting it into the little paper wrap that we've made. It goes without saying, but watch your fingers. See, I'm not trying to get into every little fold, because I just don't think you need to. I don't know why, but there's just something about them when they're cut out. They've just got a kind of extra charm to them, I think. If you've got a few like raggedy bits inside, you can sort of trim those out. And then once they're all cut out, we're going to arrange them inside our paper wrap like that. So there we've got all our individual elements, and we get the fun part now of putting them into our paper wrap. So I'm just going to slot them all in, not worrying too much about where they're going, but so that they're kind of all facing different directions. And then once they're slotted in, I can tweak the positions. Now I want this to fit within an envelope, so I need to keep the flowers within the confines of the edge of the card. I want it to look nice and full, like a good generous bunch of daffodils. So I think something like that. And then you can take your some of your leaves and slot them in, and you'll find that the daffodils do move around a little bit when you do this. It's just a case of sliding bits in and tweaking it for wherever you think looks best. You could overlap some like that. So I quite like mine like that. Now you can see I've got some bits sticking out the bottom, but again, don't worry too much about those. So without disturbing your very beautiful arrangement, so you want to kind of hold on to it carefully, flip it over so that you've got the messy backside. And what I'm going to do is just stick some of that down, just using some Scotch tape. And any bits that kind of come down below the bottom of the card, you can snip off. We will tidy that up later. So it's going to look something like that, but I'm going to put a bit of string and a little tag with a message on somewhere on the front here. So that's the next bit. So I'm going to make a little label. You can either trace around that one or just make your own, and I'm just going to make my own out of a piece of the scrap that was left over from cutting out the daffodils. So I'll find my pencil. Just get a little bit of one of the brown colours that I had before with the watercolour paint. just sort of looks a bit like a tea bag. Just kind of splodge a bit of colour on. And let that dry. Whilst that's drying, I'm going to make a couple more holes in my card where I want the string to go through. So I'm going to, it's going to go through kind of there, or actually underneath that daffodil, so I maybe should have done this before, but I haven't. I'm just going to, with my little scissors, make, actually, with my scalpel, make a hole there and carefully lift that daffodil up and make a hole there. I'm going to cut off a bit of string, so it wants to be at that length. And I'm going to thread it through. Now I've gone and raided my sewing box and got one of these needle unpickers. Might be easier without that red end on it. But basically you need to find some way of pushing your string through that hole. So I'm just going to carefully wiggle it through like that. I can feel it coming through on the other side, and then as soon as it's come through I can grab the string and pull the needle pusher back. And I'm not going to put that end through yet because I want to make a hole in this and write on it and thread that on as well. But I'll leave that like that for the moment. This is now dry, so I can get my fine liner. Just draw some lines around it. Not being too careful. And I might draw a circle where I'm going to make a hole in a minute. And cutting it out, again leaving a little area of paper round the side. And then this is going to thread through the hole. And then once I've written what I want on this, I can thread the other end of the string through the card and secure it all in place. So I'm going to, what shall I write on it? Let's write, I think I might give this one to my mummy. And now I need to try and fit this through the other hole I made. So find the hole. See it coming through the other side. Grab hold of it. And pull my picker back out. And then I want that to go under that petal. And then just adjust your string so it's where you want it. And I'm going to secure my string on the back with a bit more tape. And I might just stick that down with a little bit of Pritt stick, a little bit of glue. dab under there, because that would just sort of help to hold this and hold the string in position. I'll just hold that there for a minute. And essentially that's the card done. I'm going to tidy up the inside, so what I need to do is to get another piece of paper, cut it to the size of this, and then with my glue all that and then stick the paper on so it looks a bit tidier. So I will do that quickly. I feel I maybe could have taken a bit more time on that and done it a little bit tidier, but it's just so the workings of it don't show. And there we have it. So I hope you've enjoyed it and made something that you like. If you want to show me what you've made, I would love, love, love to see it. So Instagram's probably the best place to do that. I'm Theodora.Gould on Instagram. And if you upload a picture either to your feed or to your stories and tag me in it, then I will definitely see it. If you've got any questions or problems, then leave a comment. I do try to come back to everybody. Sometimes when life gets busy, I can lose track of comments, but I do check them every now and again. So if I don't come back to you immediately, I hopefully will soon. As always, if you've got any suggestions of other tutorials you'd like to see, then leave me a comment and I will see what I can put together. And if you want to know next time I upload something, then hit the subscribe button and YouTube will let you know. See you next time.